We're less than 48 hours away from the release of version 1.4, and it's fair to say that this version might be the most hyped one yet. Some could say it's due to the return of a very popular and highly requested game mode like the Elusive Realm, but most will recognize that a majority of this hype is driven by something else. Her. Kuro's been cooking Camellya and her release since the very launch of the game, planting a seed in our minds and hearts with her appearance across trailers, gameplay, and major plot points in the story. And now, that seed has blossomed into one of the most multi-dimensional and nuanced characters in the game. Many viewed Camellya as nothing more than gooner bait. There were countless individuals across the player base who couldn't see past the innuendos present across her trailers and cutscenes, and reduced her character to another rover simp that was doomed to repeat the same exact storytelling beats we experienced with characters like Shorekeeper and Jinsei. But the fact of the matter is that Camellya and Kuro have beaten all of those allegations completely. With the recent release of her heavily story-driven Resonator showcase, it's clear that Kuro knows exactly what they're doing when it comes to character development and world building. The hype for Camellya has only grown more and more, and her full reveal was one of the most masterful bait and switches we've seen in the industry. And today we'll be taking the time to break down what Kuro did to make it happen. Subverting a player's expectations is one of the best ways to capture their interest, as long as you do it right. And Kuro's gone above and beyond when it comes to Camellya. As always, if you're enjoying this content, please hit that like and subscribe button. Camellya is a character that every player got familiar with within the first 10 hours of the game, with one of the most memorable cutscenes and dialogues possible across the entirety of version 1.0. Many viewed her obsession with the main character as little more than raw desire, and the wording she constantly used across that dialogue certainly didn't help at all. As the versions of the game progressed from 1.1 to 1.3, and we situated ourselves with more and more characters like Jinsei, Chong-Li, and Shorekeeper, who had plenty of romantic undertones built into their involvement in main story quests or their personal companion stories, many viewed those previous interactions with Camellya under the same light. That crazy, obsessed lover trope was the prevailing impression she left across some of the player base, and what that meant was that the community was starting to believe that the Wuthering Waves story and its limited characters were nothing more than vehicles to deliver a huge volume of glazing to the MC, and in turn, the player. Then Kuro started dropping teasers, trailers, and showcases for Camellya, and it's clear that many Wuthering Waves players were far too hasty in jumping to conclusions with their reduction of Camellya to nothing more than waifu bait. With their first version teaser, it was clear that Camellya was a lot more than that. This character is incredibly complex, with a clear internal struggle when it comes to power, a boatload of insecurities when it comes to her leadership in the Black Shores, and her motivations with the main character that extended far beyond simple love for the player. It was love for their power, and what that power could do for Camellya. Following that teaser from a dream, Kuro then released the version trailer that gave us an even deeper dive into the background of this troubled soul, giving us hints that Camellya has been severely overclocking for quite some time, giving even more explanations for her erratic behavior. And when we finally got an overview of her playstyle and combat voice lines, it became very clear that Camellya wasn't just sweet-talking rover back in version 1.0. She talks like that with everybody, even the enemies she's nuking with her liberation. So much for MC glazing. This development of Camellya was fleshed out even further with the release of her official Resonator showcase, and this reveal cemented her as one of the most complex and nuanced characters in the game. Camellya comes off as an absolute villain across the entirety of this cinematic, constantly insulting her opponents, begging her adversaries to slay her, and even going so far as to unlock a second boss phase after one exile fulfills her wishes. She looks evil, and that portrayal is juxtaposed by the fact that she's a leader of the Black Shores, the organization that is, quite literally, trying to save the world. And when you factor in the background that Camellya is the primary trainer of new recruits, that gave even more depth to all of her witty commentary and advice she's spouting off to these trainees. Camellya doesn't have some absurd romantic desire for Rover. She has a baseline desire for power, and she expresses that desire to every single character. Everybody is a potential seed, not just the MC. Players, unfortunately, jumped the gun when it came to their analysis of Camellya. They had, quite literally, one short interaction with her across 4 versions in 5 months of the game, and viewed that one interaction as a complete explanation for her character and motivations. They were simply wrong. When Camellya was absent across the entirety of version 1.3, the patch focused on the Black Shores, players viewed that as a missed opportunity to expand more on the lore and background of the organization, and the limited focus on characters other than Shorekeeper was one of the biggest critiques of the patch. But reflecting now, after all of these reveals, it's clear that Kuro wanted to keep any information about Camellya tucked away until the fruit was ripe, and what that's led to is one of the most hyped character releases in recent memory. It's fair to say that every limited character released thus far has felt like a hero or a savior. The esteemed General Jian or Madam Magistrate Jinsi are great characters with their own shortcomings, but they admittedly don't have the same level of spice as someone who's trying to save the world while struggling with their crippling addiction to power. There is an insane amount of depth to Camellya that's been brewing for over 5 months, and with all of the fantastic promotional material Kuro's dedicated to her, she's become the most complex and potentially most interesting character on the roster, a lot more than just waifu or gooner bait. One of the best parts of version 1.4 as a whole will be taking the time to find out how this happened. It's clear from one of the version trailer shots that Camellya wasn't always like this. There's a clear air of innocence in this younger portrayal of her character, and players are eager to discover what turned her hair red, what created this immense desire for power, and why her age is unknown. It's clear that becoming a bloom bearer, whatever that means, was the trigger for a lot of her transformations, and players have to look past some of those suggestive undertones to get a full view of how amazingly nuanced she really is. Camellya is a character that's the result of over 5 months of careful teasing, and Kuro has had many players do a complete 180 when it comes to their opinion of her as a character, and with the knowledge that she'll play a major role in the version's main event, focused on dreams, we're all but promised a detailed breakdown on who her character actually is, and Kuro's done a masterful job with piquing that interest. Those constant seed metaphors back from version 1.0 apply to more than Rover's potential as a member of the Black Shores. Looking back on it now, the introduction of Camellya was a seed that Kuro planted in players' minds, a seed that many thought was going to turn into another fruit of MC glazing. It's not like that. We got baited, and getting baited has never felt so good. I've said it once, and I'll say it again. Camellya is going to drain us of all our astrite, but for very different reasons than the ones we thought of in 1.0. The coffers are dry after Shorekeeper, and I'm certain that after version 1.4's story, you'll be wanting Camellya on your roster just as much as Camellya wants Rover's power. Good luck! As always, if you're enjoying this content, please hit that like and subscribe button. Peace out.